Beloved, how often have we trodden a path only to find it leads to despair? The heart may long for peace, yet it can be misguided by the allure of the world. If we are to cease from this ruinous way, we must heed the signs that warn us from wandering into destruction. Ignoring God's guidance leads us into a path where we can easily stumble, lost in the darkness of our own desires and understanding. The light of God's Word illuminates our path, a lamp unto our feet, offering us direction and wisdom beyond our own. Yet, when we choose to ignore His guidance, we are left to our own devices, relying solely on limited human insight. This often leads us into confusion, frustration, and sorrow as we lack the clarity and assurance that His guidance provides. When we dismiss the divine wisdom that God so freely offers, we risk going down paths not meant for us, expending our time and energy on things that do not bear fruit. Like a sailor navigating without a compass, we drift aimlessly, vulnerable to the storms and waves of life. God's guidance offers us stability and purpose, directing our steps toward what is meaningful and eternal. Without it, we find ourselves exhausted by the weight of our own decisions, constantly looking for the way out. Ignoring God's counsel is often rooted in pride, in the belief that we can find our way without His aid. But pride blinds us to our own limitations, making us believe we are self-sufficient. The Scriptures remind us that pride comes before a fall. In thinking we know better than God, we distance ourselves from His wisdom, which is far greater than ours. Humility is needed if we are to heed His call and recognize that His ways are higher and His thoughts greater than our own. The choice to ignore God's guidance is often gradual, slipping little by little into a life governed by self rather than surrender. Perhaps it begins by skipping prayer, neglecting the Word, or dismissing the nudges of the Spirit. Over time, this neglect becomes a habit, and soon our hearts grow hardened, no longer sensitive to His voice. We start walking in a way that seems right to us, but ultimately leads to destruction. The subtlety of this drift makes it all the more dangerous, for we do not realize how far we've strayed until the consequences become too severe to ignore. When we choose our own way over God's, we also forfeit the peace that comes from knowing we are walking in His will. The world offers many voices, each claiming to have the answer, but only God's voice brings true comfort and peace. By following His guidance, we rest in the assurance that He knows what is best for us. Without it, anxiety and doubt cloud our minds, leaving us without the solid foundation that faith provides. The heart that ignores God's direction is a heart vulnerable to the worries and fears of the world. Ignoring God's guidance also robs us of the blessings He has prepared for us. When we align ourselves with His will, blessings unfold naturally as part of His divine plan. However, when we go our own way, we may find ourselves chasing after things that do not satisfy, accumulating possessions or accomplishments that ultimately leave us empty. God desires to give us good things, but those gifts are found in the path He has laid out for us, not in the paths we try to forge on our own. Our lives touch many others, and when we disregard God's counsel, we also impact those around us. Our choices have ripple effects that extend to family, friends, and even strangers. God's guidance not only benefits us individually, but also allows us to be blessings in the lives of others. In ignoring His wisdom, we may inadvertently cause harm or lead others astray. We are called to be lights in the world, guiding others to the truth, but we can only do this if we ourselves are following the path God has set before us. Ignoring God's guidance places our lives in opposition to His purposes, causing a disconnection between us and the One who knows us best. This disconnection is often accompanied by a sense of emptiness, as our souls yearn for communion with our Creator. When we are in alignment with God's will, there is a sense of wholeness and fulfillment. The further we stray, the more we feel the void, an aching reminder that we were created to walk in close fellowship with Him. When we ignore God's guidance, we also miss out on the growth and refinement that come from walking in His ways. God's path often leads us through trials and challenges, but these are not without purpose. They strengthen us, teaching us patience, resilience, and dependence on Him. Choosing our own way may seem easier in the short term, but it denies us the deep, transformative growth that only comes from walking the narrow path. In submitting to God's guidance, we are shaped more fully into the likeness of Christ. Finally, ignoring God's guidance leaves us unprepared for the battles and struggles of life. God equips us for every challenge we will face, providing us with wisdom, strength, and grace. But when we walk our own way, we step outside of His protection, vulnerable to the attacks of the enemy. The armor of God is given to those who walk in His ways, relying on His strength rather than their own. Ignoring His guidance leaves us spiritually unguarded, unable to withstand the trials that come our way. Living in pride is a condition that affects the heart and soul, often leading individuals to believe they are superior to others and even to God. This mindset fosters an attitude of self-reliance, making one feel invincible and detached from the very source of life and wisdom. When we allow pride to take root in our lives, it clouds our judgment and leads us into a labyrinth of self-deception, where we elevate our own opinions and desires above the truths and principles that God has established. This elevation creates a barrier between us and the divine, hindering our relationship with the Almighty. Pride often masquerades as confidence, giving us the illusion that we possess the power to control our destinies. However, this confidence can quickly become arrogance, where we dismiss the value of others and their contributions. We may find ourselves unable to acknowledge our shortcomings or weaknesses, believing that vulnerability is a sign of failure. Yet, in truth, it is our vulnerabilities that remind us of our humanity and need for grace. A proud heart is one that refuses to admit mistakes, leaving no room for learning or growth. In the pursuit of pride, we may neglect the importance of humility, which is essential for spiritual health. Humility allows us to recognize our limitations and the grace that sustains us. When we live in pride, we often forget that our abilities, talents, and successes are not solely of our own making, they are gifts from God. This lack of acknowledgement creates a spiritual imbalance as we begin to see ourselves as the center of our universe rather than as part of a greater plan. Pride blinds us to the truth that we are stewards of God's gifts, called to use them for His glory, not our own. Moreover, pride can lead to an insatiable hunger for validation and recognition from others. In our desire to be seen as superior, we may engage in unhealthy comparisons, measuring our worth against that of others. This comparison breeds discontent, as there will always be someone perceived as better, smarter, or more accomplished. The cycle continues, driving us to seek more accolades and applause, yet leaving us empty and unfulfilled. The applause of men is fleeting, and in our quest for it, we miss the lasting joy that comes from living in alignment with God's will. Pride also manifests in our relationships, causing rifts and division. A proud heart is often unable to show grace and forgiveness, holding on to grudges and resentment. We may find ourselves quick to criticize and slow to encourage, damaging the bonds that hold us together. Relationships thrive on mutual respect, understanding, and humility. When pride enters the equation, these essential elements are compromised. We become self-centered, prioritizing our own feelings and opinions over those of others, ultimately leading to isolation and loneliness. In the spiritual realm, pride can act as a barrier between us and God. Scripture reminds us that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. This divine opposition can manifest as a feeling of distance from God, where our prayers feel unanswered and our spiritual fervor wanes. When we elevate ourselves, we essentially place ourselves in opposition to the divine order, where humility is recognized and honored. A proud spirit cannot hear the gentle whispers of God, drowning them out with its own noise and clamor. The consequences of living in pride can be devastating, not only for ourselves but for those around us. The proud individual often exhibits a lack of empathy, unable to connect with the struggles and suffering of others. This disconnect fosters an environment where love and compassion are absent, leading to a culture of indifference. In contrast, a humble heart is open to the needs of others, willing to serve and uplift. Living in pride, we risk becoming a stumbling block to those who look to us for guidance and support. Furthermore, pride can lead to spiritual stagnation. When we believe we have arrived at a place of understanding or righteousness, we may close ourselves off to further growth. The proud heart often sees no need for repentance or change, believing that their way is sufficient. This stagnation keeps us from experiencing the fullness of God's grace and the richness of His blessings. In humility we find the freedom to grow, learn, and evolve in our faith, continually seeking a deeper relationship with our Creator. The path of pride ultimately leads to destruction. Proverbs warns us that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. This truth resonates deeply, for the more we elevate ourselves, the harder the fall will be. We may find ourselves faced with circumstances that strip away our illusions of grandeur, leaving us vulnerable and exposed. In those moments of reckoning we are called to humility, to recognize the folly of our pride, and to return to a place of dependence on God. In conclusion, living in pride is a deceptive and destructive path. It distorts our perceptions, damages our relationships, and hinders our spiritual growth. However, by cultivating humility and recognizing our need for grace, we can break free from the shackles of pride. Embracing our vulnerabilities and acknowledging the gifts and talents of others allows us to walk in true freedom and joy, rooted in the understanding that we are all equal in the eyes of God. In humility we can find strength, connection, and the true essence of what it means to live a life pleasing to God. Pursuing worldly desires can lead individuals down a path filled with distractions, disappointments, and spiritual emptiness. The world offers a myriad of temptations, wealth, power, prestige, and pleasure that can easily ensnare the unsuspecting soul. As we chase these fleeting desires, we often find ourselves in a relentless cycle, always wanting more yet never truly satisfied. The allure of worldly possessions can create an illusion of happiness, convincing us that fulfillment lies just beyond our grasp. However, the truth is that these desires can lead us further away from our true purpose and the fulfillment that can only be found in a deeper relationship with God. The pursuit of material wealth often becomes an all-consuming goal. Society praises the accumulation of riches, equating financial success with personal worth. This mindset can lead individuals to work tirelessly, sacrificing relationships, health, and even their moral compass in the name of success. The drive for more can overshadow the simple joys of life and lead to a sense of disconnection from loved ones and community. In our quest for wealth, we may lose sight of the importance of generosity and stewardship, forgetting that true wealth is found in sharing our blessings with others. Moreover, the desire for power can be equally intoxicating. The allure of influence can lead individuals to prioritize their ambitions over ethical considerations. In the race for power, one might engage in manipulative tactics, betrayals, and compromises that ultimately erode their character. This desire for dominance can create a toxic environment in both personal and professional relationships, where trust and respect are sacrificed on the altar of ambition. The pursuit of power often leads to isolation, as the individual becomes increasingly self-focused and detached from the well-being of others. Pleasure, too, is a seductive pursuit that can pull us away from our spiritual grounding. The world offers countless distractions designed to provide immediate gratification, from entertainment and indulgence to substance use. These pursuits can lead to a false sense of happiness that is momentary and shallow. In seeking pleasure for pleasure's sake, we may become trapped in cycles of addiction and excess, trading long-term fulfillment for fleeting experiences. The consequences of this pursuit can leave individuals feeling empty and lost, grappling with the realization that pleasure does not equate to true joy. The pursuit of worldly desires can also lead to an unhealthy comparison with others. Social media and societal norms often fuel a culture of competition, where individuals measure their worth against the accomplishments and lifestyles of others. This comparison can foster jealousy and discontent, making it difficult to appreciate one's own blessings. The more we focus on what others have, the more we lose sight of our unique journey and the gifts God has bestowed upon us. This relentless comparison can lead to a life filled with dissatisfaction and resentment. As we pursue worldly desires, we may inadvertently neglect our spiritual lives. The distractions of the world can drown out the still, small voice of God, making it difficult to hear His guidance. Prayer, meditation, and reflection become secondary as we chase after our ambitions. In this busyness, we risk losing our connection with the divine, which is essential for true fulfillment and purpose. Our spiritual health is compromised when we allow the pursuit of worldly desires to take precedence over our relationship with God. The consequences of pursuing worldly desires can manifest in various aspects of our lives, including mental and emotional well-being. The constant pressure to attain more can lead to anxiety and stress as we strive to meet societal expectations. The fear of failure can paralyze us, leading to a life of insecurity and self-doubt. Furthermore, as we invest in temporary pleasures, we may find ourselves trapped in a cycle of depression and despair when those desires do not bring the anticipated happiness. This emotional toll can create a sense of hopelessness that is difficult to escape. In contrast, those who focus on spiritual pursuits often experience a profound sense of peace and contentment. By prioritizing our relationship with God, we begin to understand that true fulfillment lies not in material possessions or status, but in our connection with the divine. As we shift our focus from worldly desires to spiritual growth, we cultivate a heart of gratitude and appreciation for the blessings we already possess. This perspective allows us to find joy in the simple things and leads us to a deeper understanding of our purpose. Ultimately, the pursuit of worldly desires can lead to spiritual stagnation and dissatisfaction. It is essential to recognize that true fulfillment and happiness come from a life centered on God's will and purpose. By redirecting our focus from the transient to the eternal, we can cultivate a life rich in meaning and purpose. Embracing a mindset of gratitude and service allows us to align our desires with God's plan, creating a life filled with joy, peace, and contentment. In conclusion, pursuing worldly desires can lead us astray, distracting us from the path of righteousness and spiritual growth. By recognizing the fleeting nature of material pursuits and shifting our focus to a relationship with God, we can find true fulfillment. Let us remember that our worth is not defined by what we possess, but by who we are in Christ. In this realization, we discover a life of purpose, joy, and unwavering contentment that transcends the temporary allure of worldly desires. Neglecting prayer and worship can lead to profound spiritual consequences, creating a distance between ourselves and the divine. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it is easy to overlook the importance of these foundational practices. When we allow the distractions of the world to take precedence, we risk losing touch with the source of our strength and guidance. Prayer and worship are not merely rituals to be performed, they are vital expressions of our relationship with God. When neglected, we begin to feel the absence of that connection, and our spiritual vitality diminishes. Prayer is our lifeline to God, an opportunity to communicate our thoughts, fears, and gratitude. It is in prayer that we find solace, comfort, and direction. However, when we neglect this vital practice, we may start to feel isolated, as if we are navigating life's challenges alone. Without the support of prayer, our minds can become cluttered with worries and anxieties. We might feel overwhelmed by circumstances, losing sight of the hope and peace that comes from entrusting our burdens to God. This neglect can lead to feelings of despair as we struggle to find strength in our own understanding. Worship, on the other hand, is a powerful act of adoration and reverence towards God. It allows us to express our love and gratitude, acknowledging His greatness and sovereignty. When we neglect worship, we miss out on the transformative experience of encountering God in a communal setting. The act of coming together in worship fosters a sense of belonging and unity within the body of Christ. Without it, we may become spiritually disconnected and fail to experience the richness of corporate worship. This disconnection can lead to a sense of loneliness in our faith journey, as we are designed to thrive in community. Moreover, neglecting prayer and worship can dull our spiritual senses. Just as our physical bodies require nourishment to thrive, our spirits need the sustenance of prayer and worship. When we skip these practices, we may become desensitized to the presence of God in our lives. Our ability to discern His voice can diminish, making it difficult to navigate decisions and challenges. We might find ourselves making choices based solely on worldly wisdom rather than seeking divine guidance. In this state of neglect, our spiritual growth stagnates, and we may drift further away from God's intended path for our lives. In times of difficulty, neglecting prayer and worship can lead to increased feelings of anxiety and hopelessness. We might feel that we are facing our battles alone, without the assurance of God's presence and support. The weight of our struggles can become unbearable when we rely solely on our own strength. However, prayer serves as a reminder that we are not alone. It allows us to bring our concerns before God, who is always ready to listen and intervene. Worship, too, provides a space for us to refocus our hearts on God's goodness, reminding us of His faithfulness even in our darkest moments. Additionally, neglecting these practices can create a spiritual void that we might attempt to fill with worldly distractions. When we do not seek fulfillment in God, we may turn to temporary pleasures, material pursuits, or unhealthy relationships. These distractions may provide fleeting moments of satisfaction, but they ultimately leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled. The cycle of neglect can lead to a dependence on these worldly substitutes, causing us to stray further from the true source of joy and peace. Furthermore, a lack of prayer and worship can hinder our spiritual effectiveness. When we neglect these practices, we may struggle to serve others with the love and compassion that God calls us to embody. Our ability to share the gospel and offer encouragement to those around us is diminished when we are spiritually dry. We might find ourselves going through the motions of faith without the passion and purpose that comes from a vibrant relationship with God. In this state, we risk becoming ineffective witnesses of God's grace and love. The consequences of neglecting prayer and worship extend beyond our individual lives. They can impact our families and communities as well. When we prioritize worldly concerns over spiritual disciplines, we set an example for those around us that faith is not a priority. Our children and loved ones may follow suit, leading to a generational cycle of spiritual neglect. Conversely, when we actively engage in prayer and worship, we model a life centered on God, inspiring others to seek Him earnestly. Our commitment to these practices can have a ripple effect, encouraging those around us to cultivate their own relationship with God. Ultimately, neglecting prayer and worship leads to a weakened spiritual life. We may feel distant from God, struggling to sense His presence in our lives. Our hearts may grow weary, and our faith may wane. However, the beauty of grace is that it invites us back into a relationship with God, no matter how far we have strayed. By intentionally setting aside time for prayer and worship, we can rekindle our connection with the divine. Through these practices, we can experience renewal, restoration, and a renewed sense of purpose in our faith journey. In conclusion, neglecting prayer and worship can have far-reaching consequences for our spiritual lives. As we recognize the importance of these practices, let us commit to prioritizing them in our daily routines. In doing so, we can cultivate a deeper relationship with God, experience His presence more profoundly, and ultimately grow in our faith. The invitation to return to prayer and worship is always open, offering us the opportunity to experience the fullness of life that God desires for each of us. Harboring unforgiveness is a profound struggle that many individuals face in their spiritual journey. When we hold on to grudges, we often find ourselves weighed down by bitterness and resentment. These feelings can take root in our hearts, creating a barrier that separates us not only from those we feel wronged by, but also from God. The very act of refusing to forgive can lead to spiritual stagnation, preventing us from experiencing the fullness of life that God intends for us. It is essential to understand that forgiveness is not just a gift we give to others, it is also a gift we give to ourselves. The first consequence of harboring unforgiveness is the emotional toll it takes on our well-being. When we cling to negative feelings, we allow them to dictate our thoughts and actions. This emotional burden can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and even depression. The longer we hold on to these feelings, the more they can consume our thoughts, resulting in a cycle of negativity that is hard to break. The emotional energy we expend on maintaining our grudges could instead be directed toward healing, growth, and building meaningful relationships. Spiritually, holding on to unforgiveness can create a chasm between us and God. The Scriptures clearly teach that forgiveness is central to our relationship with Him. When we refuse to forgive others, we risk distancing ourselves from God's grace and mercy. Our hearts can become hardened, making it difficult to hear His voice and feel His presence. We may find ourselves struggling with feelings of guilt and shame, which can hinder our ability to approach God with confidence. This spiritual disconnect can leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled as we miss out on the intimate relationship that God desires to have with us. Moreover, harboring unforgiveness often leads to a distorted perception of others and the world around us. When we allow bitterness to cloud our judgment, we may begin to see people through the lens of our hurt. This skewed perspective can result in unfair assumptions and judgments about those we believe have wronged us. We might isolate ourselves, convinced that others are against us, which can further exacerbate feelings of loneliness and despair. As we nurture these negative thoughts, we create a narrative that hinders our ability to see the good in others and the beauty of God's creation. Additionally, unforgiveness can prevent us from moving forward in our lives. When we are stuck in the past, clinging to old wounds, we become unable to embrace the present and the future. Opportunities for growth, joy, and connection may pass us by as we dwell on past grievances. The chains of unforgiveness can keep us shackled to our pain, preventing us from experiencing the new life that God offers. To move forward, we must confront our feelings, seek healing, and choose to release those burdens that weigh us down. It is also important to recognize that forgiveness is a process, often requiring time and intentional effort. Many people assume that forgiving someone means that they must forget the hurt or the harm that was done. However, true forgiveness does not necessarily erase the memory of the offense. Rather, it allows us to let go of the power that offense has over us. We can acknowledge the pain and choose to release its hold on our hearts. This process may involve prayer, reflection, and at times seeking counsel from others to help navigate our feelings. Forgiveness also has the power to transform our relationships. When we choose to forgive, we create an opportunity for reconciliation and healing. This act of grace can open the door to restored relationships, fostering a sense of community and connection. By forgiving others, we demonstrate the love of Christ, which can serve as a powerful witness to those around us. Our willingness to extend grace can encourage others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of healing and understanding within our communities. Additionally, the act of forgiving ourselves is a crucial aspect of breaking free from the chains of unforgiveness. Often we hold on to guilt and shame regarding our own past actions, which can hinder our ability to forgive others. Just as we are called to forgive those who have wronged us, we must also learn to forgive ourselves. Recognizing that we are imperfect beings capable of making mistakes allows us to extend grace to ourselves as we seek to grow and learn from our experiences. This self-forgiveness is a vital step toward healing and wholeness. In conclusion, harboring unforgiveness is a heavy burden that affects our emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. By recognizing the toll that it takes on our lives, we can take intentional steps toward healing. Forgiveness is a powerful act that not only releases us from the grip of bitterness, but also restores our relationship with God and others. It is a journey that requires patience, grace, and the willingness to let go of the past. As we embrace the transformative power of forgiveness, we open ourselves to new possibilities for growth, connection, and joy in our lives. Fearing change and growth is a common struggle that many individuals face throughout their lives. Change can be daunting, often bringing uncertainty and discomfort. When we encounter new situations or opportunities, it is natural to feel apprehensive about the unknown. This fear can stem from a variety of sources, including past experiences, societal expectations, and our personal comfort zones. It is essential to understand that while fear is a natural response, it can also become a barrier to our personal development and spiritual growth. One of the primary reasons we fear change is the uncertainty it brings. Human beings are wired to seek stability and predictability. When faced with the unknown, we may feel anxious and overwhelmed, fearing that we will not be able to handle whatever comes our way. This fear can lead us to cling to familiar routines and environments, even when they are no longer serving us well. By allowing fear to dictate our decisions, we may miss out on valuable opportunities for growth and transformation that God has in store for us. Additionally, past failures can significantly impact our willingness to embrace change. If we have experienced setbacks or disappointments in the past, we may develop a mindset that associates change with negative outcomes. This fear of failure can paralyze us, preventing us from taking necessary steps forward. We may find ourselves trapped in a cycle of avoidance, allowing our past to define our present and future. However, it is crucial to remember that growth often comes through overcoming challenges and learning from our experiences. Societal expectations can also contribute to our fear of change. In a world that often values conformity and adherence to norms, stepping outside our comfort zones can feel risky. We may worry about how others will perceive us or whether we will be accepted if we choose a different path. This fear of judgment can lead us to suppress our true selves, preventing us from pursuing the passions and dreams that God has placed within us. It is vital to recognize that our worth is not determined by societal standards, but by our identity as children of God.
I don't know how to write a love song. It seems so hard to me. I thought the problem was there's no conflict, but I was wrong. Hidden away, yeah, right there. I'm scared of just how much you mean to me. I don't know how to put this into words. How much I care, how I'd be lost if you weren't there. You ground me, you save me, you're another part of me. I don't know how to explain it, how you make me feel this way when you put your hand through my hair, when you hold me, saying it will be okay. How could I possibly say it right? Oh, I tried, I've been up all night. I wish you knew how much I care, how I'd be lost if you weren't there. You ground me, you save me, you're another part of me. I don't know how to explain it, how you make me feel this way when you put your hand through my hair, when you hold me, saying it will be okay. How could I possibly say it right? Oh, I tried, I've been up all night. I wish you knew how much I care, how I'd be lost if you weren't there. You ground me, you save me, you're another part of me. How could a song be enough when everything we've been through never broke us up? No matter how rough, you rescue me, you stay true. How do I convey how you make my day? I don't know how to say it the right way. How much I care, how I'd be lost if you weren't there. You ground me, you save me, you're another part of me. I struggle to find hope, I've struggled to sleep at night. I can't struggle to let you know that I won't let you go. For so long, you helped me fight. We created life. I don't know if this is a love song. I don't know what to do, because I love you.